This is a brief overview of the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is the system of the heart and blood vessels that pumps blood through our body. This system is really important because it delivers blood to all the parts of our body, and with the blood it delivers oxygen, which our cells need in order to survive and function properly. Let's take a look at the structures that allow the cardiovascular system to perform this important and vital function. First, let's take a look at the different kinds of blood vessels of the cardiovascular system. There are two main kinds of blood vessels, arteries and veins. Arteries carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart to the different organs of our body that need the oxygen. Veins carry deoxygenated blood back to our heart so that it can be filled with oxygen again when the heart pumps the blood to the lungs. Arteries branch off into smaller vessels called arterioles. Veins branch off into smaller vessels called venules. Both arterioles and venules branch off into smaller blood vessels called capillaries. Capillaries run through different parts of our body in order to allow for gas exchange to occur. The capillaries stemming from the arterioles carry oxygenated blood and bring oxygen to the cells of a body tissue, and the capillaries of venules transport the deoxygenated blood back into venules and veins and eventually to the heart, where it can be transported to the lungs to gain oxygen once more. Now let's take a closer look at the heart, the central organ of the cardiovascular system. The heart is a muscular pump that pumps blood through the body. It consists of 4 chambers, the right atrium and right ventricle, as well as the left atrium and left ventricle. Oxygen-rich blood flows from the lungs through the pulmonary vein to the left atrium. Then it is pumped by the atrioventricular valve to the left ventricle. Next, the oxygen-rich blood is pumped to the aorta by the semilunar valve, from which it travels to all the parts of the body and supplies them with oxygen. The oxygen-deficient blood then returns to the heart through the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. It enters the right atrium, from which it is pumped to the right ventricle by the atrioventricular valve. Next, it is pumped to the semilunar valve to the pulmonary artery. Once in the pulmonary artery, the oxygen-deficient blood travels to the lungs, where it is filled with oxygen once more. Now that we've discussed the two components of the cardiovascular system, let's look at a full circulation cycle using a simplified diagram that shows the major veins and arteries. There are 2 basic circuits in the circulatory system. The pulmonary circuit, where the blood picks up oxygen from the lungs and brings it back to the heart, and the systemic circuit, where the blood delivers the oxygen to the different parts of the body. Now let's look at a complete circuit. First, oxygen enters the lungs and is picked up by the capillaries around the lungs, entering the bloodstream. The oxygenated blood then moves through venules and eventually enters the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein transfers the blood to the left atrium, from which it is pumped to the left ventricle by the atrioventricular valve. From the left ventricle, the oxygenated blood is pumped by the semilunar valve to the aorta. Arteries branch off from the aorta, transporting the oxygen-rich blood to arterioles that branch off into capillaries and transport the oxygen to the head, chest, and arms, as well as the abdominal region and legs. Once the oxygen is dropped off in the body tissues, the deoxygenated blood flows to venules and eventually to major veins. The inferior vena cava is the vein that flows from the lower body to the heart, and the superior vena cava from the upper body to the heart. The oxygen-poor blood flows from the superior and inferior vena cava back to the right atrium, which is pumped to the right ventricle by the atrioventricular valve. From the right ventricle, blood is pumped to the pulmonary artery by the semilunar valve. The blood flows through arterioles and eventually capillaries, where it picks up oxygen from the lungs again, allowing the cycle to continue. Now that we've discovered the main structures of the blood vessels, let's find out what the blood inside of them consists of. There are 3 components in the bloodstream at a cellular level. There are red blood cells and white blood cells that are suspended in a fluid called plasma. Red blood cells are really important because they can carry oxygen and carbon dioxide through the bloodstream. To perform this function, they are disc-shaped, so that they have a large surface area that oxygen can diffuse onto. Red blood cells use a protein called hemoglobin to transport oxygen. Each red blood cell can contain up to 250 million molecules of hemoglobin. White blood cells are actually part of the immune system. They help keep our body healthy by fighting off foreign substances called pathogens and destroying them. As I mentioned previously, both red blood cells and white blood cells are carried by a fluid called plasma. Plasma mainly consists of water, but it also includes ions and plasma proteins in order to help maintain osmotic balance and buffer the pH of blood. Now let's look at some diseases of the cardiovascular system. Because the main function of the cardiovascular system is to carry blood through our body, most of its diseases involve blockage of blood vessels. The four main diseases I would like to focus on today are sickle cell anemia, atherosclerosis, heart attack, and stroke. Sickle cell anemia is a genetic disease that causes red blood cells to be sickle-shaped instead of disc-shaped like they should be. Because the cells are sickle-shaped, they can't transport enough oxygen and also often break down, blocking blood vessels. Because the cells can't transport enough oxygen, the person is often very tired and listless. The blocked blood vessels are small, so usually they are those in the eyes and brain, which can lead to blindness and stroke, which I will discuss later. There is no cure for sickle cell anemia yet, but there are treatments including medicine to increase the amount of blood cells. Atherosclerosis is a disease caused by the blockage of blood vessels by the buildup of fat and other debris in our bloodstream. Often, atherosclerosis goes unnoticed because its symptoms are rather vague, including pain and a shortness of breath. However, atherosclerosis is a dangerous and lethal disease. When a blood vessel is completely blocked, blood is unable to flow through it and thus is unable to deliver oxygen to different parts of our body, which can lead to stroke or heart attack. Only after encountering one of these events do people realize that they have atherosclerosis. They can be treated through angioplasty, where a wire is pushed through blood vessels to destroy the plaque. Heart attack is a disease that affects the blood vessels that supply blood to the heart. These blood vessels are very important because the heart, like any other organ of the body, needs oxygen in order to function. In fact, the heart performs one of the most important functions of our body, so it's very vital that it receives enough oxygen to function. When the heart is deprived of oxygen, it stops pumping blood to the body, causing the rest of the body to slowly die. Some symptoms of heart attack include chest pain, nausea, and shortness of breath. A heart attack can be treated by surgery and blood clot dissolving drugs, but it often ends in death or impaired cardiovascular health. Stroke is a lot like heart attack, but has to do with blood vessels in the brain. When a blood vessel delivering oxygen to the brain is blocked, the brain can't receive oxygen and can't perform its function to send out commands on what the body needs to do. This also causes the body to die if not treated immediately. Some symptoms of stroke are numbness, disorientation, and headaches. Treatments for stroke are also surgery and blood clot dissolving drugs, similar to the treatments for a heart attack. If you are interested in learning more about the brain, I'll link my video on the nervous system in the description. As you can see, cardiovascular diseases are dangerous and deadly, but there is an easy way you can prevent most of them: staying healthy. If you eat well, exercise regularly, and don't smoke, your blood vessels will stay nice and clean with no clogging, preventing atherosclerosis, heart attack, and stroke. These are my works cited. Thank you so much for watching.